Hey everybody, welcome back. So last time we talked about data structures, and today we're going to actually go download the data and feed it into R. So today we're finally going to get to open up RStudio and actually get to play around. Well, we're not going to play around, but we're actually going to get to feed the data into R. And unfortunately, that's one of the hardest things to do to even get started is data science software is very particular, and it even though it's going to be complicated at first, you'll start to understand and appreciate why it's so particular about doing everything. It's annoying, but it's also nice that it follows very specific rules. So the biggest challenge that most people have with dealing with these object oriented data software is just from the very beginning getting data into it. So we're going to go through that today. We probably won't have much time to do anything beyond that. So we got a lot of ground to cover. So I want to go ahead and get started. And we're going to use the data that we talked about last time so that we don't kind of get hung up with you trying to read in your own data into R for the first time, because your data file might have some idiosyncrasies in it that might cause some issues. So I'm going to do this so that you can follow along with me. Now, so we need to go to my Patreon page so we can download the data. So just open up your web browser, um, and let's search for Patreon. Let's click here. Let's go up here to the search window. Let's search for my Patreon page, The Business Goat. That's me right there. Alright, now let's scroll down. Past that one, it's right here where it says Data Science for Teachers, what data looks like. And we're going to click this one over here called grades_long. So we're going to click right there. And you'll see it'll start to download right here. Now, real quick, even if you don't have, this is a Microsoft Excel file, but even if you don't have Microsoft Excel, you're going to be able to do everything that we're doing today. Now, you may not be able to open it like I'm about to, but you're still going to be able to do, or open it in Excel, but you're still going to be able to open it in RStudio. Just because you don't have Excel, that's not going to keep you from doing anything else today except for opening this data like this. And the reason, just click the enable editing. It's fine. So the reason that you're going to be able to do it is because your computer understands what a certain file is based upon its what we call a file extension, which is basically the dot whatever at the end of your file name. Like right here, this is called grades_long, but what your computer sees is grades_long dot XLS. And so as long as there's a .xls associated with the file, you're going to be able to read it into R. So real quick before we go to the next step, I realized I didn't mention something last time that's kind of important. We talked a lot about how R wants this very structured, columns and rows, but also R understands that the first row is not like the others. It knows that all these other rows are data points, but that this first row are column labels. And so there are certain rules you have to follow whenever you make column labels. They don't have to be centered like this. They can be back over to the left just like everything else. That doesn't matter. What matters is you can't start them with things like dollar signs. You can't start them with numbers. You could put numbers at the end. That's perfectly fine, and I do that a lot. And you can't have spaces in between. Generally, R is going to understand, just mush them together, but spaces aren't helpful for R, and so it's usually a good idea to stay away from it. So usually if I want to have a space between words, I'll just put a little underscore there. I just wanted to cover that real quick. You don't need to capitalize anything. R isn't a stickler for capitalization and punctuation. And that's another thing. You probably don't want to put periods or exclamation points or anything in your column labels. Just make them real simple, and as simple as possible, but descriptive enough so that you understand what they mean. Now, the way most data science software works is you have to feed the data into it. You can't just open RStudio and all of a sudden your data is going to be in it. You open RStudio and it's a blank slate. It's what we call a new session. So you open up RStudio, you have a brand new session running. So R is like, all right, we're starting mostly from scratch. So it's not going to understand, well, you did this last time, or you fed this data in last time. It doesn't know that. Um, so we have to tell RStudio where to go look on our computer to find it. Basically, we have to give it a roadmap to say, hey, I saved my data file on my computer in this spot. Now go to that spot and get it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it easier for R to go find where our data is. So we're gonna right click on our desktop, and we're going to go down to New and go over to Folders. So click on that, and we're going to create this new folder. We're going to call it My First Data Viz, and we're going to click Enter. Now we're going to open this. You're going to double click. See, there's nothing in it. There's nothing in it because we just made it. So we go ahead and close it. So what we need to do is we need to put this data file into this folder. And so I know that whenever I download stuff on my computer, it goes to the downloads, right? That makes sense. So you click on Downloads and go to grades_long. If you don't know where it's saving on your computer, you can do this. Let's close out of there. If you go down to your little search thing and type grades_long, and you can go to where it is and do right click on your mouse, not left click, but right click, and then go to Open File Location, and it'll take you right here to where it's at. And see, it's in Downloads. So what we want to do is we want to open up our other folder over here, double click on it. And so what we want to do is we want to move this data file over to this folder. So we can just click and hold and drag it over, but that's not going to work because we have the data file open. You can't move it if it's open. So we're going to close this, and then we're going to close our data file. No, we don't want. This is asking me if I want to save it because I kind of messed around with it and made some changes, but we don't want to save the changes that I made. So now we're just going to do the same thing. We're click and hold and drag it over. So now we have our data file in our folder on our desktop. So let's go ahead and close this one. And now the time has come to open up RStudio. Now, remember, we're not opening R, even though R is doing all the work. We're opening up RStudio so that we can have sort of an easier interpreter for us to talk to, and then RStudio goes and talks to R. Now, remember from one of the last episodes, we need to go over here up to the top left where this little green plus symbol is, and just to the right there's that little down arrow, and then we want to click on R script, and it's going to open up this window for us. And now this is the window where we make all of our little programs. This is where all the action happens. This is where we basically write little descriptions. We write little instructions for R to do. And so one of the first things we need to tell R to do is to, hey, go find the data and open it and put it inside yourself, import it into you. So that's what we say. You import data into your data science software. Now, if you also remember from back when we downloaded R and RStudio, R is kind of it's kind of small. It's a little, even though it can do a whole lot and it's really powerful, most of its power comes from the packages that other people have written for R, that they make freely available for R. And so we need to go download a package off of the internet. So you need to have an internet connection for this first part. We need to tell it, go to the internet, find this package, and put it into R for us. And so we're going to go up here to the tools drop down, and then go to Install Packages. And we're going to click on it. Now, right here, we're going to start typing the name of the package we want. So I know that there's this package that the people at RStudio made that's called ReadExcel. So we're going to start typing it, read, and so it starts thinking of options of what you might want. But ours is X and then L, so it's this one right here. So we're going to click on it and make sure the install dependencies is checked. That basically means that this package also needs other packages to work as well. Now we're going to click install. We're going to see ours thinking. Here it goes, it's installing. All right, and it says package ReadExcel successfully unpacked. So we know it's downloaded and it's good to go. Now, you're never going to have to install the ReadExcel package again. It's saved on your computer. Now, if you try to use R on someone else's computer, you're going to have to install it again, and you're going to need an internet connection to do it. But basically, you're never going to have to install this package again on your computer. Now, you're going to have to tell R to go open this package on your computer, so you don't need internet connection for that. And what we use to tell R to do that is we type the word library. See, it tells us library right here. So library is basically a function, and you notice if I click on it, it puts these two parentheses here. So everything we tell it to do. So this is like an instruction. This is like telling R to go to the grocery store. We're saying, hey, go to the grocery store, or hey, go to the library and go get this book in my library. So this is like your home library. This is a library that you're creating on your computer for your own home library. And your library contains all the really cool packages that you can use to do stuff with R. And so even though you don't need an internet connection to use this part, you still need to tell every time you open up RStudio, you're opening up a new session for R. And so even though you might have told R the last time you had it open, hey, we're using this ReadExcel library book from the library, it's not going to remember that you used it last time. It's going to be real stubborn. It's sort of like being married. If you got a husband, you gotta grab him by the hand and like tell him every tiny little instruction of what to do. R is the same way. It's like a stubborn man. Even though you may use this package every time, it's not going to remember what you used last time. So you have to tell it every time which book, which package you want to use from the library. So we know that we want to use the Excel package that we just downloaded, or ReadExcel. So it's got this little predictive thing, so I can go ahead and click on it. That's the one we want to use, and when you hover over it, that's another cool thing the RStudio does. It'll give you a little description of it over here. So it works on Windows and Macs and Linux. So that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Even though you don't have Excel saved on your computer, you can still do everything we're about to do. So I'm going to click on ReadExcel, so you see it's going to finish filling it out up here, or you could just type it all on your own. And so basically what I've done here, I can click enter. So that doesn't do anything because basically all this is up here, this is like a grocery list or a list of instructions. It's not, RStudio is not going to do anything after I type something. It's going to do something after I type it, and then I have to highlight it and then click run. Now it's going to do it. So even though I wrote down the instructions, I didn't tell R to do the instructions until I highlight it and then click run. And you have to make sure you highlight the whole thing. Now, another quick thing I want to say is you'll see warning down here, and that's a bit of a misnomer because anytime you see warning, that doesn't necessarily mean anything went wrong. I think a better word they could use would be attention. So it's not telling you warning you did something wrong, even though it's in red too. It's just saying attention, this ReadExcel package that you just told us to go get out of our library that we have now, it comes from this version of R because R is updated all the time. And so you didn't do anything wrong. It's just telling you, hey, look, this is the version we're working with. Maybe that's not important information to you right now, and it's not. But it's just letting you know, more information is better than less. So now we get to what the object-oriented part of R and RStudio is. So basically the way R works is you can create little objects, little boxes, little baskets that you can then put things into. And so it's basically like creating a little present for R to say, hey, I'm going to make this little present and I'm going to call it this. And we're going to call this my data. All one word. Remember, spaces, R doesn't like spaces. You can use them in some things, but when you're making a package, if you want, you can put the underscore here to call that my underscore data, so you can call it my data. But basically, this is going to be an object. We're just going to leave it all one word, my data. So this is a package that we're creating right now. It's like we're coining a new word. We're coining the word my data, and it's going to be a little box, a little package that we put stuff in. And the way we put stuff inside of packages is we make this less than sign and the dash right next to each other. Don't put spaces between them. Now R understands that this is you're telling R, I'm about to put something on the other side of this, and I want you to put that inside of this little object. So they call this an assignment operator. So this is like your hand giving something to this, or your hand putting something into this object that we're about to create. Now the way we're going to put something into that is we're going to use a function, like a tool, like a little thing that the ReadExcel package has, and it's called read underscore Excel. And you see that it does this predictive thing again. So if you want, you can just click here, or you can just keep typing. But I'm going to go ahead and click here to show you something else that it does. So if I click here, see how it puts these parentheses over here? Because it knows that I'm going to want those parentheses. Anytime you have a function like this, like a little tool, you have to put it inside the parentheses and right next to it. You can't have spaces or anything. It's got to be right up against it. Now, remember how I said we have to tell R where to go look to go find the data? That's what we're about to do right now. So let's minimize this. And we know it's in here. So I'm going to double click on my folder. So we know that our data file is in here. So I'm going to show you a little trick. Don't click on the actual name right here, but click over here in the white space in this window. And you see how this whole file path opens up. And so this is what I'm talking about, giving R a roadmap, directions to go find the data. So we're telling it, go to our C drive on our computer and go to users, my name, go to my desktop, and then on my desktop there's this folder called my first data viz. And so we want to highlight all this, and on a Windows you can do Control C to copy it, or you can right click, copy. And now let's go back to R, and then we're gonna paste it inside of these parentheses. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, R doesn't like, well, first of all, whenever you do that little trick that I showed you, it's going to use backslashes for the file path. R does not like backslashes for file paths. It likes forward slashes. So we're going to change these backslashes to forward slashes. And the forward slash is down there by the shift key where your right hand is. It's right next to it where the question mark key is. So instead of a backslash, we need a forward slash. And now I'm also going to go ahead and tell you, see how there are spaces here? Remember, I'm going to sound like a broken record. R doesn't like spaces in file paths either, because it thinks you stopped talking to it if there's a space. So in order to be able to use the spaces, we need to open up parentheses over here and then close the parentheses at the end. And so now that's just kind of a little trick you can use whenever you have spaces in your file paths, so that you can kind of get past that little problem with R thinking, oh, you put a space here, that means you stopped talking to me. And now we can go ahead and run this now, right? So we've told R, hey, here's where you go find my data, go get it. So let's go ahead and let's highlight this. Remember, you have to highlight everything. And now let's click run. Alright, now we got an error. Now the red actually means something went wrong. So basically what this is telling us is, this sounds like a bunch of gibberish to you, I'm sure. But basically what it's telling us is, hey, you told us where to go to find the data, but you didn't tell me what the name of the data file actually is, because I mean, even though there's only one data file in this file path, there could be hundreds of data files that we have saved in here. So we need to tell it exactly which one we want it to get. And it's this one called grades_long. So let's go back over here, and we're going to make another forward slash. And now we're going to tell it the name of the data file. So it's grades_long. But also, remember, the way that we're able to do this on both Windows machines and Macs and Linux machines is because they all understand that the file extension is associated with certain kinds of software like Excel. So we have to put the .xls. And so now this ReadExcel package and R and RStudio all understand, oh, you want me to go here, and once I get there, you want me to open this data file. Okay, see, you got to tell it every little thing. So now let's highlight everything, click run. Oh, look at that, there's no red. Did it work? How do we know? Well, we know because we have this other little function that's just built into R by itself. We don't have to go get any packages for it. It's called view. And now you can just click here and it'll go ahead and open up and put the parentheses for you. But I want to show you one more thing. I know we're past 20 minutes now, but real quick. If I just type view where the V is lowercase, and then I open up my own parentheses, and notice once you hold down shift and enter your open parentheses, RStudio go ahead and it puts the closed parentheses in there for you too, because it knows that you're going to need it. Now if I type view, remember with the lowercase v, and then remember what we did up here is we just created this new little object thing, this little package, little box, and inside this box we put this data file. And now I'm telling R, I want to look at that data file. I want to look at that little box, that little present that I made for you. So let me look at it. So I'm just going to put my data inside here. And now I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to hit run. And it's giving me another error again. And the error, it kind of makes sense now. It says it doesn't understand the function view. And that's because we didn't give it a capital V. Now you're going to get real frustrated with this with R in the beginning, but you'll learn to appreciate that following very strict rules very strictly can be beneficial too. So now that we have the capital V, I'm going to highlight this, and now I'm going to hit run. Look at that. You just imported your first data set file into the data science software R using RStudio. You are halfway to being a full-on data scientist, right? Not quite, but this is pretty cool, I think. And if you think it's pretty cool, then maybe you just caught the data science bug. So like I said, we're already past 20 minutes, inching towards 25. I want to go ahead and end it there. You can click this little X right here. So we know that we have the data file in here. So the next episode, we're going to make our first data visualization, and we're actually going to get to it real quick. It should just take about 5 to 10 minutes. I believe in you. You can do it if you want to do it. Now let's get to work.